welcome back to another episode of Wrestling Collector Zone. Today what I wanted to speak about was a video game that was always my favorite when I was younger on the PlayStation 2. And it doesn't have to do really with pro wrestling. It's actually backyard wrestling. Don't try this at home. And I myself loved this game. I remember at the time when this game was coming out, it was something that I had really looked forward to. I know that there was some kind of pushback, pullback, that when reservations first went out that you could pre-order, it was getting tons of pre-orders. But then what ended up happening with GameStop and everything, and between the it wasn't really GameStop's fault as much, it was the company's fault that was putting out the game, I'm guessing, and the company of Backyard Wrestling themselves, that the game ended up getting pushed back I think 2 different times from the original date. And so then a lot of people started canceling their pre-orders. But one of the good things when you pre-ordered the game was there was 2 different versions of the game. The pre-order version and then just the regular release version. The pre-order version came with actual DVD that it's Music and Mayhem DVD. And then you got the game itself. And the Music and Mayhem DVD didn't feature a whole lot. It's a real short DVD, but it was kind of neat because it had a couple music videos on it, and then of music that was going to be featured on the game. And then it had a couple matches on it that they had set up somewhere, I think in California, a ring, and did a couple matches, which was they brought in most people know him nowadays, everyone knows him now as Matt Cross, but his name when he first started was M-Dog20 and Josh Prohibition. They both had got their start in backyard wrestling, but by the time this game was coming out, they had already entered into pro wrestling, been trained and entered into the pro wrestling field. And they brought them in for a match that was featured on the DVD. There was a Madman Hondo versus Rude Boy, kind of hardcore with some light tubes, I think, and trash can kind of match, stuff like that. It wasn't really anything special, but it was kind of a neat feature, something special to have, just extra with the game. And when I got my version, I of course did the pre-order, so I had this version. And then after years of having it, playing it, and new systems coming out, I no longer had the game. And I want to thank my brother Josh last year when I went down to Georgia to visit my mom and brother for Christmas. He actually had found this game for me, this copy of it, at one of the flea markets down there, which the game itself is not like a rare thing to find, but this copy of the game with the extra disc, the pre-order disc, is kind of rare to find. So that really surprised me, and that made me really happy because I now have basically the same copy that I had when I originally had the game. Now, I want to get into the game. Something about it was, the wrestlers that were on here featured were M-Dog20, Josh Prohibition, the Insane Clown Posse, Violent J, and Shaggy 2 Dope were on here, Madman Hondo. So it was it's kind of weird because the game itself featured really mainly pro wrestlers, versus any type of the backyard wrestlers that were featured on the backyard wrestling game. But they did feature one wrestler that at that time too. By the time the game was out, he was already a pro wrestler as well, but his name was Carnage, and he was one of my favorite, I would say, backyard wrestlers / pro wrestlers. He did like a lot of death matches, hardcore matches. He got his start, I believe, in HIW, which was High Impact Wrestling. They were a backyard wrestling company that was out of Tucson, Arizona, that ended up going pro, and they had all got trained and everything. So that was one of the, I would say, kind of possibly downfalls of the game itself. Was they had a great lineup of people you could pick to wrestle with, but at the same time, technically by then they were all pro wrestlers. So I feel maybe they should have pulled some of the people that were featured on the Backyard Wrestling DVDs that were still backyard wrestlers and put them in the game instead. That would have been like a real great feature. They should have pulled some of the backyard wrestlers that were on the Backyard Wrestling DVDs and put them on the game instead. I think that would have been a better kind of lineup and feature to actually be wrestling with real like backyard wrestlers. But otherwise, it was a great lineup of people you could choose to wrestle with. The environments, you could completely use the environments, what was laying around. Each level was different. There was, if I remember right, there was like a warehouse or meat locker area that you could wrestle in. There was a real backyard that you could wrestle in with like a broken down vehicle or something like that. And you could grab parts off of the vehicle. And you could use those like the door off the car. You could rip the door off the car and just start beating on your opponent with it. So it was great. They did like great environments of actual backyard wrestling. It's the only thing I think that did kind of miss, because there was, back when backyard wrestling was more popular, there was some backyard promotions, that they did build their own wrestling rings. And I feel that's kind of something they missed in the game, that none of the environments actually really had or housed a wrestling ring. So it was just flat out on the ground you were wrestling, which was fine. Yeah, a lot of Insane Clown Posse songs were featured on this. And one of my more memorable things that I really enjoyed with the game itself was it didn't have really too many unlockables, but one of the unlockable things that it had in the game was that you could unlock music videos as you went through the environments and had beat, like the storyline that they had, which was really short. Like, we're talking literally you could beat it within a day. And you would be able to unlock music videos of backyard wrestling featured in some of the songs on here, as well as like Insane Clown Posse owned their company, Juggalo Championship Wrestling. And they, I think, featured possibly 2 music videos, 1 or 2 music videos of some of their pro matches shows on here. And that was one of my favorite things, because once you started to get bored with the game, you could go and watch those music videos, and it was something extra and entertaining that was put into the game. And then it was for 2-player. So I do remember when I had pre-ordered it and got it, me and my brothers, Sean and Josh, had played it for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. just had fun with it overall. If you have a PlayStation 2 or even an Xbox, because it was on the original Xbox as well, if you have a PlayStation 2 or an Xbox, I would say if you haven't played this, or even if you have, remember how fun it was. Go out to your local used video game store and try to pick it up. Now it is rated for mature, 17 and up. So obviously make sure to be responsible with that situation. If you're underage, it's not necessarily a game for you. But otherwise, it was just overall a great game, great memory for me. The game came out in 2003. So that was one of my favorite games that was on the PlayStation 2. And this is just kind of like an episode I wanted to do, a classic throwback to one of my favorite wrestling games that was on one of the older systems. If you have, I know there was tons of other great games back then. There was like Legends of Wrestling 1 and 2. I know there was Legends of Wrestling 1 and 2 that was really great on the system. Some of the SmackDown games were really great when they were bringing those out on a normal basis. I would say, I know nowadays the graphics got 100% better on the new systems with the wrestling games, but to me, they're not as fun as what the old ones were. So if you have some memories of playing some of the older wrestling games, just drop some comments below and go ahead and, start up a chat. What was your favorite classic, or doesn't have to be classic, but just a little bit older wrestling game, or even current, whatever you want to do. And if you have any questions, again, just drop it below and I will answer. It's great to have you guys come and check out the video again. Thanks for stopping by. Make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And this was Wrestling Collector Zone. Thanks again. Have a great day.